And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you for joining me again for the second time. It's difficult when you're doing this solo flight and I had some technical difficulties, particularly with my audio. So without further ado, so let's get going. So with our first topic today, in terms of games, what you consider a great game, what do you consider a terrible game? Now, our focus today will be talking about what makes a game terrible. Now, there have been a lot of games that have been published, that have been made. I'm sure some of you have already played some of the worst games, but in our case today, we'll be talking primarily in terms of the worst game ever. And this pertains to the NFL football simulation that is called Madden 2021. Now, it's a American football game which I used to play years back, and it was a very entertaining game that I really enjoy watching as well as playing the game itself. Now, in the years, in the several years past, I've stopped playing it because in terms of its innovation, of its gameplay, it's somewhat, marginal improvements, and it's not worth my time and my money to play the game. And it's reached to this point, which is the culmination of, you know, players are already seeing for what it is. It's just a cash grab for the company, for the publisher here, for EA, and people are clamoring for the NFL to sever its ties, obviously with EA, and to find a different publisher that can make a better game, which Madden was able to do years back. So what happened here? So if you were to take a closer look in terms of the game, so what do we have here? Yeah. So in terms of the game, now obviously visuals, it's nothing too spectacular, but it's still a game, right? That people would enjoy to play. But at its core, if there's a lot of bugs, glitches in terms of how it's played, it's not an enjoyable game, then why release a game that's not complete, right? So why would people pay $60 or even 3,000 pesos for a game that has a lot of issues? Similar how Fallout 76 happened, right? You see how it turned out. People were laughing at it. People are angry about it. It's one thing to make a divisive game like The Last of Us Part 2. It's another game that you release a game with the intention of making money out of it, but not providing a game that is of value to everyone, that everyone can enjoy and play, right? And not only that, in terms of the cosmetics, what do you call this? In terms of its cosmetics, it used to be that if you're going to play a player, you want to dress it up in terms of aesthetics, better, different colors, different outlook in terms of tattoos, sleeves here, arm sleeve, leg sleeve here, used to be free, or even a mouth guard. But in the case of EA, they're trying to capitalize of players, I would say gullibility, but in terms of enthusiasm of playing a simulation game. And guess what? They're the only one who's, producing this type of game, and NFL gave them the rights. Obviously, they paid them millions, even billions, to have that right. Now, obviously, do you just blame EA here, or should NFL be culpable here? Because it's their product that's being showcased here. If they provide a product that is not, of top quality, similar to the actual game, shouldn't they be able to dictate, we should sever our ties and look for a different publisher here altogether? But again, obviously NFL is happy with the money that is being raked in because they've already been paid this big sum of amount. So EA can just do whatever they want. Now, obviously, years pass, players are okay with it. They still shell out the money, but now I think they've reached a point, a culmination that it's too much. It's too much to bear. And if you can see in terms of the Metacritic scores here, so let's take a closer here. So here, if you can see clearly, so for the Madden NFL game here, you can see that the critic users, you give them somewhat a so-so review of 63, right? Which is not that great, but not that bad. But look on the other side. Look at the user review. They give them a horribly point 0.3 rating. So, it's less than 1, which tells you a lot in terms of how people are, enjoying or not enjoying the game itself. And compared to the almost 4,000 users that have already posted here, compared to just only 23 critic reviews, who do you tend to believe, right? So let's take a look here in terms of the ratings here. So obviously someone gave them a perfect 10. So people love to hate on Madden. It is what the cool kids do. Thus 885 people chosen to leave a negative review. Now obviously leaving a negative review has its pros and cons, but at the end of the day, if hundreds or even thousands of people are saying the contrary, maybe there's something to it that not just the gamers has to look at it, but the game publisher itself, right? I mean, they have to be responsible. But again, at the end of the day, EA or Electronics Arts is a company, a publicly listed company that is only answerable to the shareholder. And at the end of the day, if the company rakes in millions or billions of dollars, then the shareholders are happy, right? But what about the gamers, right? Or the people who actually buy their games? If no one buys their game, where are they going to generate the revenue? We're not even talking about the loot box manipulative schemes that they're talking about. We're just focusing on the game itself. So, EA has been in hot water for quite some time. From the Battlefront fiasco, and then the loot boxes that's happening right now with football, with basketball, with NBA, even now in Madden. So that's for another day. But in terms of the loot boxes, when the government agencies in different countries has catch up and would consider loot boxes as a gambling mechanism scheme, then that's the only time that they would stop. But the game itself, it's flawed to the hill in terms of actual gameplay, in terms of features. It used to be that when you play a game, it has several added features that you can try out. So it's not just the actual game that you can play, but you could try out different. I think they're featuring the yard wherein you can play 6-on-6, something like that. But again, it's not just the aesthetics, but it's the content, the content or the in-depthness of how in-depth is the game. So what can you gain out of it? More often than not, if I play a sports simulation, I like to try the franchise mode, being able to control a team, bring them to glory, something like that is one of the fantasy that obviously every individual would like to be able to do, right? So provide a better game, and I think people would pay even more as long as the game is solid, right? And we have to wait and see until such a time that EA's bottom line is being hurt by people not buying the games anymore. I think nothing will change. Which is a sad fact, right? Think about it. Now, speaking of games, now you might be surprised that in the saga that is happening in Chinese not Chinese community, but in China, many apps are being banned in India. First and foremost is TikTok. Now, not just TikTok, but other Chinese app. One that is being banned, or not being banned, is banned already is PUBG, one of the popular mobile games in the world. So not just in India, and this would have a significant repercussion for the company itself. Now, obviously, India has a big market. They have millions of users or active users. So I think it range in the 40 million range, I think. Let me see here. Yes, it has 40 active users here. So think of the lost opportunity for the company if they were to suddenly disappear, right? Obviously, this will impact both sides, the user as well as the developer. And obviously, for the developer itself, for the company, the income that they generate from the microtransactions or from in-store purchases, as well as advertisement during in the game itself. So this would have tremendous impact. And not only that, will this be just be a precursor of what will happen in other countries as well? Let's say in the United States, in Europe, or even in Canada, and so forth, right? So what will be the fate of all other Chinese app that is developed or that is in the market right now? So people, do you draw a line that if it's related to China, you don't deal with it, you cut ties with it, then obviously this would affect the company, but also the user who have invested heavily in this platform. And obviously the country or the government themselves is only looking at the interest because there have been complaints with regards to the what do you call this? There have been complaints regarding to the what do you call this? The issues regarding, where is it? Can't see it. There you go. Yeah, they were saying that they're prejudicial to sovereign integrity of India, defense of India, security of state, and public order. Now, obviously, I think this started with the clash between the border of China and as well as in India. But obviously, things have already escalated to the point of, this has now impacted their economy in terms of what can come in, who can come in, who can invest, and which company can set up shop in their country anymore. And this has significant impact. Now, obviously, it's not just PUBG that is affected here, other companies as well. So let's take a look at the list here. So they have several hundreds that are listed. They have to create an appendix for this occasion. So you can see here, Baidu is an online platform. That's one more popular. So we have WeChat here. So this is significant, right? Because WeChat is a not just a it's a multi, it has different aspects that it's an ecosystem, especially in China. You talk to people, you pay with it, and it has different services along with it. So it's now banned in India. Check, check. Check. And we're back, I think. Are we back? Yeah, I think we're back. Yeah. So I lost audio again for some reason. Anyway, so as I mentioned earlier, so how does the richest person make his decision? So the person I'm talking about is Jeff Bezos here, founder and owner of Amazon. So the richest person of the world makes his decision. You might be surprised in terms of how he does his decision making. It's not necessarily primarily based on data driven, or simply on data analysis, a numbers guy. But he uses his instincts, as he calls it. He uses intuition. He uses his heart and guts to make the big decisions. And one of the many examples that he has relied upon this is, going or creating the Amazon Prime, the digital platform that they're using for streaming services, and even before buying Twitch, the platform itself. So many of his people have been saying that if he were to go this path and create the digital platform, it's a lose scenario. There's no win-win here. And as a decision maker, obviously, if the numbers tells you one thing, you just simply accept it, right? But not for his case. Now, obviously, there's some risk involved in it. If you make big decisions that you're going to invest millions or even billions of dollars. But then at the day, if the numbers telling one thing, then you're trying to decide whether to push through or go with it. You know, maybe you don't go again. But in his case, to be successful, you still have to make some risk, right? Now, whether it's considerable risk or minimal risk, it's always up to the individual. And what's surprising here is when he makes his decision, it has turned out well for him, right? So a person who is worth over 200 billion makes his best decision, and it's not just based on numbers, but it's based on gut and intuition, right? And as he mentions, right, all the best decisions that is made have made that is based on heart, intuition, and guts, not just with analysis alone. Now, obviously, using analysis is part of the process, but not the end goal, or not the only tool that you utilize. Obviously, the more information you can get, the better informed you are in making the decision. Now, if it's just based on guts alone, I don't think he would be too confident going that route. That's why you surround yourselves with competent people, great people that can help you make the best decision. Now, if it were just him making that decision alone, I don't think he would be this successful, right? So obviously, data is always important to help support make the decision. But at the end of the day, it's the person who has to make the decision. It's not the data, right? Obviously, data can be manipulated, can be changed to see what you want to see. But if you put it into proper context, it's just data to help you supplement in your final decision. And which is kind of interesting, right? I think it makes sense, right? Obviously, for a person like him, a multi-billionaire, you know, that the decision for everyone else is, you don't just go in it haphazardly. Obviously, it has to be strategic. You make decisions based on information provided, and you make the decision at the end of the day. Is it well worth the risk? When he started with Amazon, I think it's a big risk. At the time, You know, he was at the time where the internet was booming, so the e-commerce platform has not yet flourished like the way it is now, especially right now with the pandemic that's happening. So people has to make certain risks, but the risk has to be calculated. Cannot be simply just by a matter of chance if you think about it. Anyway, so continuing, so in terms of technology companies, so Tesla is one of the more what do you call this, more innovative companies that has been pushing the electronic vehicles here, or electric cars. So one of the main stories that has been happening recently is, there was a person who tried to pay an employee to hack the software or the system of the Tesla, what do you call this, the software itself, so that they can extract information here. Which was kind of surprising if you think about it. It's somewhat like a movie, a spy movie here. So let's take a closer look. So here, as I mentioned, an employee was targeted by a Russian person who tried to pay the employee to plant a malware. Now, the person tried to pay or bribe him as much as $1 million. So that's a large sum of money, where it was started, when they were conversing using WhatsApp here. Obviously, the Russian person here was in Russia at that time, and he he came here with the understanding that the employee was going to plant a malware in in the software, so that they can extract information, so that they can disrupt Tesla, the company itself. But obviously, the employee here was loyal, patriotic to to the American brand. Did the opposite. That person collaborated with the official, in this case the FBI, to catch the person here, and that person was sentenced to 5 years, I think, and was fined $250,000. Now, obviously, this is what was reported. Now, hopefully, the employee got a significant pay raise from Elon Musk for doing the right thing here, because other people could have just simply folded and taken the money and to hell with the company, it's not mine, right? So, but the problem here is, if this is one of the stories that we have heard of, I'm sure there are a lot more that's behind the scene that's been happening, right? It's not just Tesla, but other prominent companies that, insider trading, sabotage, all of those things, you know. That's why typically a company is more vulnerable internally rather than from external threat. Similar how Twitter was hacked before, it was with collaboration, not by accident, with the internal employees, wherein data was breached because using information from the employees internally. So this can be, companies has to be careful, especially with the age of data revolution, that information is out there. We have to be careful how to protect ourselves, and everyone has to be vigilant, right, in terms of what information is provided. Continuing in the same story, so Tesla was in a clash with Chinese consumer, right? In particular, I think it was in Hubei, yes, in city of Wuhan, right? So wherein the issue here was, what do you call this? The issue here is the Tesla refused to deliver their Model 3 vehicle to the customer here. When the customer bought the vehicle through a e-commerce platform in China. I think the name was Pinduoduo, okay? And there was a promo here, so obviously many consumers try to take advantage of the promo with provided a 20,000 discount, 20,000 renminbi. But there was a change in regulation in terms of how Tesla was supposed to accept orders. Now, they change it that they have to go course through the official website of Tesla, wherein you make your order, not through other platforms. Now, obviously, the person here already made the order and has already paid, I think, and and didn't get the delivery because of that. Now, obviously, this has caused a lot of ruckus because Tesla is a very popular brand, especially in China, because they have a what do you call this? They have a plant there, apart from the Gigafactory in I think in California, then in China, then they plan to expand that in Europe as well. So where is it? There you go. Yeah, the clash between the consumers here. So as mentioned there. So not only that, now obviously the Chinese Consumer Association is going to defend the rights of its consumer, but at the end of the day, it's out of the reach of the said individual, because at the end of the day, Tesla made a change of policy that has affected the individual, whether they are able to deliver the vehicle or not. So he has to wait, right? He has to make the proper channels here, right? Now, whether that's good for consumer, at the end of the day, Tesla vehicles are not cheap, right? If you think about it. I think, how much was it? For an average person who's earning around roughly 6,000 renminbi, in his case, I think the Model 3 is around almost 300,000 renminbi. So that's not technically cheap. And obviously, those who can afford, the Tesla vehicles are, somewhat, considered affluent people, right? That's why they're targeting tier 1 and tier 2 cities primarily. Yeah, and in particular, in Wuhan, only Hubei has one store there. So, it's not yet, you won't consider it a consumer-friendly vehicle. It's still somewhat expensive, a luxury rather than a necessity to have a Tesla vehicle. Next year, continuing with technology still. Speaking of Apple, now, for those who are interested in, search engine, looking for stuff, who's your go-to guy here or go-to search engine? It's obviously Google, right? And guess what? There will be a contender in the very near future. Not now, but very soon. Well, based on the article, that Apple is planning to create its own search engine to compete with the likes of Google's search engine, as well as Yahoo's, I think Microsoft Bing search engine. So if you look at this closely, Apple is trying to dominate the world in terms of providing different facets, diversifying their product line, not just in terms of mobile phone, laptops, its ecosystem of its experience. Now it's trying to branch out into, in the application form with its, issue with Microsoft, with Facebook. They're trying to compete with everyone else, right? Obviously, they have the clout and the resources to do that. Now, why the sudden shift, right? Obviously, as of right now, if you're a MacBook user or Apple user, whether you're using your smartphone or in your tablet or desktop or even in your laptop, the search engine that is preferred here or that is being used, you can see here it's still Google, right? Because Google paid a substantial amount in terms of, what do they call this? A substantial amount in terms of being the preferred search engine. I think they paid in terms of billions, right? Yeah, billions, right? That's right. To be able to be the preferred search engine here. Now, obviously, if you're Apple here, you're thinking to yourself, maybe I could take a piece of it and, have, instead of being paid billions, why not earn more than that? Now, is that too greedy in your opinion? That's their right as a business, but which leads us to another point. Is Apple growing too big? Similar how Apple, Facebook, and even Google, all those big tech giants are now being considered, a monopolistic in terms of in their industry, in their field, in their realm. That's why, Congress has issued them, I've been grilling them in terms of, in their unfair practices of how they deal with regular consumer, charging them, especially for Apple in terms of their, dealings with Fortnite, banning them, and then with cloud gaming, they're against that and so forth. So there's a lot of things going behind the scenes that we're seeing there's turmoil there, but Apple is still moving forward, right? Obviously, this is a good strategy for them to capitalize on what they're not good at, and how do we know how did the rumor started? Because there were reports that I think it was here. Let me see. There were reports that there were job posting regarding search engineers, so which obviously it's a big hint that companies like in this case Apple is looking for people who has the technical background to be able to create. How do you create a search engine here? Okay. Now, obviously, Apple is still years behind or even decades. They have a lot of catching up to do, but with enough resources, with all the backing from the company, I think they can compete with Google here. Obviously, competition is better, but at the end of the day, Apple, what will they become? In terms of their product offerings. So we'll have to wait and see. And in terms of me saying the world domination, well, it's getting there. It's getting closer. And on a related topic, so this year, so despite the pandemic that's happening, you know, businesses are doing poorly, sales are down. No, Apple is still doing well, tremendously at that. In terms of they still plan to release their latest flagship phone, which is the iPhone 12 later this year. But before that, because of the pandemic, the supply chain problem, they primarily plan to focus on releasing the lower budget or lower tier phone sometime later this year before the iPhone 12 release. So they expect to sell as much as 75 million units. So that's very, I wouldn't say promising, but that's, very optimistic, right? So meaning they've already projected that there is a demand for their product. So in terms of expenditures, they still expect people to spend, hundreds or even thousands of dollars for their product. And what's ironic here is they're asking their suppliers to be able to meet the requirements here. Now, whether that happens or not, time can only tell. And they not only plan to release the iPhone, the latest iPhone here, also the lower tier iPhones, a cheaper one technically, which would have 5G wireless technology, as well as different sizes and so forth, and other products such as the iPad Air will be released also later this year, and Apple Watch as well. So something to look for if you're an Apple lover here. Continuing. So even though businesses are doing well, some are doing poorly, department stores in America are being hammered significantly. What do I mean? Now, typically a department store is geared towards to more on the apparel side. So when people go to stores, they try to look at clothes, being more fashionable because you go to work, you go to parties, you enjoy, your community, your society. But with the pandemic, people are not going out anymore. So this has reflected in the business model that it is the department stores, from the Macy's to JCPenney's and the likes, are not doing so well to the point that they are closing shops, right? So if we were to take a closer look, so who are the retailers that are doing well? Well, obviously you have Walmart here, and Target is one of the companies that are doing better. So how are they doing better? Now, obviously, when you talk of Walmart and Target are considered value shoppers, right? When you say value shoppers, they're more concerned with in terms of the pricing scheme, affordability, the value, the money value that you generate from, buying your products, right? And other companies that are doing well, the online platform, we also have Best Buy is another example, and Amazon, which primarily focus on electronics, right? So their sales are up. Another one is Home Goods and Wayfair, that focuses primarily on home furnishings. So you can see here that the trends or the behavior of customer purchasing has shifted tremendously, and those businesses who have invested heavily on online or e-commerce platform will reap the benefits here. On the other hand, as mentioned earlier, fashion or apparel who have invested heavily on retail stores, are not doing so well, to the point that they have to close their shops, and to the point of filing for bankruptcy, which is sad to say. No matter how big your business is, if it's not sound, it's not financially sound, even if it's 10 years, or even 100 years in the business, like Neiman Marcus and with the likes, they still, file for bankruptcy with the fact that, expanding too fast, being leveraged in terms of debt, is not doing well for any businesses here. This pertains to, as I mentioned earlier, from high ends to low end. So from the JC Penney to Nordstrom. So you can see here, it's not doing well for many businesses, right? And we keep on continuing this, and as you can see in the next part, that what are the products that we need to look for. So which businesses will thrive in this pandemic, and how long will this pandemic, last? Will it be a short term or even a long term uh, situation? Continuing. So as I mentioned now, even though apparel is doing poorly, you might be surprised in terms of what people are buying nowadays. Okay? So there have been talks that, with people stuck at home, work from home, studying at home, that people are not going to spend more, or they would spend less, which is the contrary. So I was surprised to find out in terms of the next article here that we call this the pandemic consumer economy. Okay? So changing in the behavior, as mentioned earlier in the previous discussion, from work from home, studying from home, and so forth, people tend to not necessarily stop buying, but with the same amount of money that you earn, you just shift to a different focus, buying on other stuff. Not other stuff that you won't normally buy, but because of the situation, you tend to buy more. So in this case, one of the more popular items that was being mentioned here is coffee. So you're stuck at home, you tend to drink a lot more coffee. Ketchup is another condiment. And another product is Nike Air, or meaning athletic shoes. So because you're stuck at home, maybe you do a lot of exercise. So it's not necessarily if it's cheap or expensive. It's the lifestyle that you're accustomed now, or the new normal, so to speak. Right? So let's take a look here. Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, so the consumer has changed significantly to the point that people are buying more products that they need actually. So with the likes of more coffee, as I mentioned earlier, more ketchup because people are eating at home, and buying products such as sneakers, Nike sneakers is that. Then you have yoga pants from Lululemon, which is kind of interesting, and handbags. So meaning even though some products are considered expensive or cheap, people are still willing to pay the price, pay the amount. So as long as it needs tailor fits to their needs, right? So the key here is what business are you in. So if you know the pattern that what the customers prefer, then you can provide that service or product. Then even in this difficult time, why some businesses are doing well, or not just doing well, are gaining profits at an extensive rate, while others are doing so poorly to the point of foreclosure or filing for bankruptcy. Yeah, as mentioned, actually another thing that they mentioned here, that in terms of demand, which is kind of ironic, there's lesser demand on certain products, but other products are now being driven up in terms of based on customers' preferences and change in behavior. Now, will this have an effect in the price increase? Obviously, it's just law of supply and demand. So when demand increases, prices tend to increase, and if demand decreases, prices decreases as well. So it just shifted from one product to another, which is kind of ironic. What we used to consume before, nonchalantly, is now more expensive compared to pre-pandemic, and what we used to consume now, it's now becoming more expensive. Anyway, so segueing, so in terms of medicine, right? So in the field of health now, many businesses obviously are not just businesses, but countries are, considering when will the what do you call this? When will the vaccine come? Because it can't come anytime sooner, right? Because of what's happening worldwide, people are getting sick, people are dying. It's affecting individual, family, even businesses, even the economy has seen the downside of a pandemic like what we're encountering this year. So, a lot of companies, pharmaceutical companies, are, pushing ahead in terms of being able to produce the first vaccine, viable vaccine that would eliminate the virus. And not only that, obviously, it's not just producing the virus or the vaccine, sorry, that one has to consider, but also if indeed in the future, let's say 6 months or a year from now, they're able to produce, what's next? The issue here is the distribution. So how can individuals, businesses, or even nation acquire such vaccines? And obviously, we're not just talking of one dose, 10 dose, thousand. We're talking millions and millions of doses. So countries like Canada, even the United States, are purchasing 75 million doses of Novavax coronavirus vaccine, and they're paying millions and millions or even billions to have first dibs on the said vaccine. Now, obviously, in this case, Canada has already tied up, I'll say tied up, but has contracted Novavax to supply Canada for next year, 2021. So it's called the NVX-CoV 2373, which is currently right now, which is on phase 2. So as mentioned, phase 2, they're already doing human trials for this one on a small scale, but by the time it reaches trial 3, it will be a larger sample size. Hopefully, it has better promising results, so that by then, it just needs approval from the, depending on the governing body for vaccines, and then they can mass produce it for mass consumption. Now, obviously, it's not just Canada who's thinking ahead. The United States is also heavily invested. They invested as much as $10 billion, and they have already scouted for as much as 6 candidates to produce 300 million doses for their people. So hopefully they will be able to have the vaccine ready by next year, January. Now, obviously, the problem here with the issue here is the vaccine, once it's available, will be in short supply. Now, again, with the law of supply and demand, low supply, high price. And obviously, there will be businesses here, especially here in our country, who will take advantage of that, saying that the price would be jacked because of the limited supply. But in reality, if our local pharmaceutical companies are able to produce it in mass quantity, then it should be affordable for everyone, right? We have to wait and see. Hopefully, it will be distributed in a fair, ethical, and a transparent way. Now, if we talk of politics here, it gets somewhat shady here, and we have to wait and see here, and who gets first dibs on the vaccine. Now, for some update regarding TikTok, I was talking earlier, we mentioned that TikTok is now in the process of being sold off. Now, there are talks whether Microsoft's got in the running. I think Twitter was, and then there was Oracle, and now there's Walmart. So Walmart is now in the running for buying TikTok. Now you may wonder, what's a retailer business got to do with TikTok here? Now obviously Walmart is a retail giant here that competes with Amazon. Now obviously they've been trying to gain a bigger footprint, a wider footprint. It's not just in the retail sector, but also in multimedia, or in this case, social media platform, which makes sense because they have the capacity, the revenue, not the revenue, but the resources to purchase it. But obviously what they plan to do here is they plan to work with another company, which is Microsoft, to purchase the company. Now obviously the point of purchasing the company here is in terms of the advertisement. So this will open up a wide section that Walmart hasn't reached in a long time. So in terms of potentiality, this could be tremendous for Walmart. And this could bring up competition with regards to Walmart versus Amazon and the likes. Now, obviously, Walmart tried this before by buying Voodoo, which is a video on demand, which later on, I think this year, they sold it to Fandango, which is owned by NBC Universal. So they're trying to find ways to gain a footprint in terms of competing with the likes of Amazon here, which is, we have to wait and see. Will Donald Trump be happy with that transaction here? We never know what's Mr. President Trump is thinking nowadays. Anyway, continuing. Speaking of local news, now for many companies that is producing a lot of wastage, what do they do with that? Now, do they simply put it aside, continue with business? Now, if you're a social responsible business, in this case a company, with a company like Nestle Philippines, they're partnering with a company, Plastic Credit Exchange, to reduce its plastic footprint, which is obviously Nestle Philippines is known for their many products such as Milo. They also have Nescafe. Now, obviously, all of their products, uh, creates plastic wastage, right? So, what do? So, obviously, they're able to find a partner that can, alleviate this situation and reduce the footprint that they have instituted in the first place. So, they collect the soft plastic waste. Okay, so from three different locations. So one we have in Baseco in Tondo, Manila. Another is in Payatas, Quezon City, and another is in Rodriguez in Rizal province. So they're partnering up with Plastic Credit Exchange, which is founded and has the president of not Mrs. Nenet Medved Po, the former actress, if you're familiar. So this is a good way to try to reduce the footprint of plastic wastage in the world. Now, not only that, Nestle has already instituted different programs to alleviate or help the community. So they've also instituted the Aling Tindera, which turns waste into cash program. So if they have a sari-sari stores, they can put their waste there. So it's a collection hub of sorts. So they can convert that into cash so that they can generate revenue from that and encourage people to reduce their waste in Manila. So collection points for consumer plastic waste. So obviously, it's not enough just reducing the footprint. Obviously, that's from the past. But moving forward, obviously, they're still producing tons and tons of plastic. So what do? Obviously, they need to shift or find ways to, not say replicate, but replace plastics as an alternative. Now, is it possible? Now, obviously, like with the straw, they're shifting from plastic straw to paper straw. But from personal experience, they need to find a better paper straw, because some paper straw dissolves easily and doesn't taste, I would say taste better, and it tastes sour. It doesn't leave nice in my taste bud. Hopefully they can find a better product that, that is tasteless, that would still taste similar when you use a plastic straw. And obviously, in terms of other products as well, is there a substitution or alternate to use in terms of plastic or even foil? It's a difficult endeavor. Obviously, you have to protect the product itself. But it's a big goal, and it's a long ways to go. Hopefully, other companies are following suit in terms of what Nestle is doing here. I'm sure other companies are doing, but we need to increase awareness so that everyone will benefit tremendously. And next year, so speaking of companies, as mentioned, so even big companies are being affected by the pandemic. So more so than others, and you would be surprised which companies are doing well and which are not so doing well. Now, one would expect that even though during this pandemic that not many will survive this in the long run, but obviously as a large corporation, big firms, they can what do you call this? They can stabilize in the near future. Not more so for the small businesses, right? And as we can clearly see here, so let's take a look here. Yeah. So how the pandemic is crushing companies' earnings now in the likes of Jollibee, PLDT, Globe, Pure Gold, and many more. Now, obviously, it depends on the industry which are significantly affected the most and which are significantly affected the least. Now, obviously, basic commodities, food, water and the likes are, would tend to do well. But in the case of Jollibee, they're having difficulty because in terms of they're trying to expand their business, they bought, I think, bought other companies. Yeah, they bought other companies, so which have dramatically affected their bottom lines. But in terms of other companies like PLDT, Telecommunications, PLDT Globe are doing enough, doing well to not necessitate a negative growth. On the other hand, Pure Gold on the other hand is doing really, really well. They're earning in terms of billions, even better than they were before. Now, obviously, who are doing poorly, obviously, those are considered non-essentials, non in leisure spaces. Tourism is another. Even malls. Actually, I've been to the mall recently, and you can see businesses are either some are shut down, some are open, but sales are not the way that they were before because people are apprehensive of going out. It's not yet safe. I don't know how long would that before that happens that people are can go out again. And also the entertainment, especially I passed by to the movie theater one time and I was thinking, what's the last movie that I watched, and then what's the movie that we'll be able to watch? Is it a year from now, 2 years from now? That's something that we all miss doing, recreational activities, but that's not possible as of the moment. Now, obviously, we're talking of different companies here, so let's take a look closer look here. Yeah, in terms of earnings, I was saying earlier, so many of them have lost significantly. Now, none more so than the restaurant industry here. So you can see here, their growth is in the negative, almost 300%. So they're not doing too well. Now, obviously, they're dependent on foot traffic here. So you can see here that, that's why they're doing badly. Now, for the other industries, they're not doing so well as well. So if you're in the cement industry, almost negative 100, conglomerates, retailers, power industries, and as well in the properties, they're all in the negative, with the only exception of the consumer goods manufacturing, obviously because it's a basic necessity that they're doing, not well, but doing barely enough to survive, right? And even big blue chip companies, as I mentioned here, if you take a look at the chart here, a big glaring drop off is the Ayala Corporation, right? Wherein they are generating almost 40 billion from a year before and to just a measly 10 bill, almost 8 billion this year. But still, if you look at it, many of them still earning billions. So it's not detriment to those big companies. It's, I think, more so to the small businesses because they don't have the big cachet of in terms of the resources to keep them afloat, maintain those businesses, and retain those employees. But obviously, they're not immune. And you can see here, Bloomberry is one that has a negative revenue here. So not just that, you can see Jollibee did really poorly here from a positive 2.5 billion to negative 12. So meaning, what happened here? What could they be doing wrong here? So you can see here, the pandemic only goes to show that business decisions do have a significant effect, whether in the short term or in the long term. If businesses are not prepared to consider the ramifications in the short and long term, when a pandemic like this occurs, it will, exponentially show how vulnerable a business is. And hopefully, business can recover within the next few months and hopefully within the year. And take a look here also, JG Summit is doing not so well from 17 billion a year to almost negative 1 billion this year. So some are doing well, some are doing so and so. Even San Miguel Corporation is not immune from generating 26 billion last year to negative 4 billion. So, this is a sign that businesses has to wake up that you cannot just be greedy to the point of concerning the short-term gains. You have to ensure that your business is sound so that if crisis like this occurs, you can stave off the the difficult time, and once it passes, then you can go back to your normal trajectory of looking for growth, for more profit, for more revenue. Now, speaking of retailers and consumer goods, so you can see here, the, the chicken here, the chicken sad. So Jollibee, as mentioned earlier, has lost almost 12 billion pesos here. Same boat, Maxis Group, lost almost a billion. Shakey's is also half a billion. So many industries that you normally think that they would do well are not doing so well. But if you're going to do poorly, you want to minimize it, not to the point that Jollibee is in the boat right now. But obviously, one of the key culprits here is obviously they bought companies like Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf as well as Smash Burgers, which necessitate, that's why they are in the red in terms of 12 billion. That's a large sum of money. Now, for other companies, Pure Gold was doing well. So let's take a look here. So you can see here, Pure Gold is even doing better than they were the year before. Now, obviously, in terms of their business strategy, they're a standalone grocery store wherein it's accessible to almost everyone. So they're strategically located in different areas in the metro. Now, with the likes of All Home not doing so well, but their earnings still positive. Robinson Retail as well, and Metro Retail is doing the opposite. So even Universal Robina is doing well, as well as Century Pacific Food. Obviously, those who are doing well are considered basic necessities or consumer goods that everyone needs, that are affordable, and whether it's domestic and global, you can see the patterns are somewhat similar. People only prioritize what they need, and then if they have access, they tend to buy stuff that they want, that is available, that can be used at home. Finally, for our last topic, now we've been talking about Jeff Bezos earlier. Now you'll be surprised. Now, obviously, Amazon is a company that is more on providing products that deliver to your doorstep. Now, who delivers those products to your doorstep? Obviously, you have what do you call this? They have they contract delivery service from individuals. So they do this on a contractual basis or part-time basis. I forgot which part. So it's similar how Grab is. So when you make an order to a particular establishment, they contract Grab or Uber. So they look for a rider who's available within the area, so they can pick up the order and then deliver it to you. So and they are paid a commission. So what others are doing in terms of in Amazon, obviously they try to put phones, they hang phones on trees so that they can get more deliveries. So which is interesting, right? So obviously people are trying to, people in the United States are, many are unemployed, so they're trying to find ways to, generate income to support themselves, and many are finding, being resourceful in terms of how to capitalize on this. Now, so what they do here is, obviously, if you're desperate, you'll do everything in your power, right? So rather than be in the area, so you don't have to be necessarily in that particular area to be able to receive that order. So if you place a phone on a tree that is near to, let's say, an establishment, let's say you order at Wendy's, you order or go to or going to order at Amazon, so you have deliveries, so it's already well placed. So if Amazon can detect your phone and you sync it with your phone somewhere else, so you can be first one to, be the first one to contract it and get the commission out of it. Now, obviously, this is somewhat devious if you think about it, but at the end of the day, is it legal? Is it ethical? It's somewhat debatable, but again, for many people, they have to find a way to be able to support themselves and not just, think about, how do I survive in this difficult time. Now, obviously, Amazon is looking into this in terms of, is there a way to limit the, what do you call, unethical practices that people are using now, whether it's legal or illegal, who's to say? Now, if you see people hanging phones on the trees, then you just best avoid them altogether. Anyway, so I think that's about it. So if you have any question with regards to today's topic, so sorry for that. technical difficulties that we'll be encountering today. So you can check out in the link in the description for all the articles that was discussed today. Now also, you can also hit the notification bell icon so you can stay updated with the latest videos as well as news. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Take care.